never talk about your pain. Can't appreciate the sun without acknowledging it rains, right? That's right. So this a moment of clarity. And make sure you always protect your energy. You stay focused and your life gon' be lit. And you are now rocking with Celeste the therapist. Let's go.
Okay, here I go. Hi, beautiful people. So if you are watching me on the replay, thank you for watching me. I appreciate you. Let me just put the headline there. We're talking about children and their mental health, but taking care. I'm just gonna add it to the banner really quick. Kids and their mental health. Oh, good. You're looking forward to this. Okay, let me see. All right, so my name is Celeste. I'm a therapist from Boston. And I come on Wednesdays, 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time to discuss different mental health topics that people struggle with and kind of help people work through ways to deal with it. And I am a very practical, person when it comes to talking about ways to deal with things, because I recognize how challenging it is, how difficult resources are. So I really try to make things as accessible and easy for people to digest. So if you are new to my platform, I have a ton of episodes. If you go to celestetherapist.com, you can find the links for that. Some people are watching me on YouTube, but if you're not on YouTube, I'm also on YouTube, a ton of episodes on there as well. So today we are talking about kids and their mental health. This is a subject I'm really passionate about. You know, I work with adults only, but I have, I have kids and people have kids. So I understand the challenges that comes with raising kids, especially in 2024, post-pandemic, especially with technology. My daughter says that I was born in the 1900s. It sounds like wild when you say it like that, but it's true. Where a lot of the things that the kids have access to, I never had access to. And so the kids now, they have access to different things. The pressures that they're under looks different than the pressures that I had, different kind of pressures. And I think sometimes it's easy to look at their situation as a parent and think like, oh, like, I don't understand, it's not that bad, or what are they complaining about, et cetera, et cetera. There's so many different ways that we find ourselves minimizing some of the things that they're dealing with, which isn't fair. So I'm hoping that the session today can help you really think about the way that you are dealing with your child, their mental health needs, and things like that. So let's just start with some common mental health challenges that children are facing. And if you have a child and you haven't really thought about this, please do, because it's important. So some of the common ones are anxiety. That's a huge one, where they're feeling anxious about going back to school and navigating classrooms and bullying. And when it comes to bullying and navigating these things, I also want to point out, because when I went to school, I dealt with things in my neighborhood or in the school. Now there is social media. Now there's so many other ways that kids are being bullied. And, it's easy to say, like, don't worry about it. But the emotions that these kids are dealing with, even though I don't work with kids in my practice, I worked in the ER for a long time, in the emergency room for a while. And I've met with these parents, I met with these kids, and I see the things that are happening and the pressures that these kids are feeling that they don't even have language for. So anxiety is a huge one. Depression is another one that kids are dealing with. Stress. So going back to school and trying to get more organized with the assignments, especially if they're going from elementary to middle school to high school. Just the fear of school is scary for people. When the pandemic happened, a lot of children whose kind of development socially was hindered because they were at home. And especially if they didn't have any siblings. If they had siblings that was close in age to them, it might have been a little bit more different. But if they didn't have any siblings, a lot of times some of the crucial points of their life when it comes to development was disrupted because they spent a lot of time alone. So I do want you to keep that in mind, because, it seems like it's the pandemic's been far removed, but the effects of it, you can see clearly from a psychological standpoint, not just with kids, I see it with adults as well. Mood changes. So students may experience a range of emotions, including worrying, sadness, irritability, and fear. Loss of friends and family. Death is a huge one. Kids, they lose grandparents, they lose friends, they lose people. And when children lose people in their lives, sometimes as adults, we just want to take their pain away, or we don't want them to think about it. And, when it comes to death and losing people, is a part of life. But also, we really have to be mindful to include children into the conversation on what they're feeling and how they're feeling. And even if it's a person that was close to you as well, like being okay with talking about the loss as well. We're afraid to talk to our kids about hard things because we think it'll make it worse. But I promise you, it'll actually make it better, because they start to see you as human, and they start to recognize that they're not alone, and they have a safe space to talk to their parent about these things. And then sleep disorders. Sleep disorders can be caused by medical issues, psychiatric issues, environmental problems. When we're worried, just because we lay down and go to sleep doesn't mean that we're going to sleep, right? Our mind is still going. And so if your child is having a lot of sleep problems, that's something to pay attention to and to communicate with them. And you can even develop like a nice sleep routine with them. I'll talk about that in a second. So strategies for supporting your children. This is important. So creating a safe space, right? Make your home a safe space for your child by having frequent conversations with them. That the frequent conversations is important. Kids, if you don't have a relationship with your child where you're talking regularly, it'd be hard for them to talk to you when things are going wrong. You may notice some signs, but it'd be really hard. So having frequent conversations is so important. Establishing routines. So having consistent routines for things like bedtime, meal times, and family activities can allow for your child to really feel safe and secure. The bedtime routine is something that, since they got to go to bed at some point, especially with school starting, trying to develop some kind of system to check in, whether it's if you're driving them to school or if you're getting them ready in the morning. It doesn't have to be long or deep. It can just be something that's simple, where it's like, what are you looking forward to today? At night I do my routine at night with my children, and we ask 4 questions. How are you feeling? What are you grateful for? What are you going to do to prepare for tomorrow? And what went well today, right? And you can create your own questions. Part of the dialogue needs to be, how are you feeling? Because you really want them to have a cadence on understanding what they're feeling. But also the gratitude piece allows them to really look at what they're grateful for, what went well today. And then like preparing for tomorrow is something that can be, my camera just unplugged. Hold on. Start cam. Preparing them for tomorrow is something that can be important, because it's going to help them build a system for themselves as they become adults, right? As they're getting older, like we turn 18 and it's like we get thrown out to the world. But imagine if we had the tools to prep us for preparing for the next day or finding gratitude in the day. Those things, they actually do matter. So establishing routines with your children can help. Encouraging physical activity is important. It's something, I didn't grow up with screens. And so you were outside. So a lot of times I think that, older people that were forced to be outside, you couldn't come back in. And if you came back and you had to stay in, so you stayed outside, we were getting a lot of our needs met through that physical activity without realizing it. And so even if it's like going for a walk together, going to the track, just be mindful that you are trying to encourage your kids to move their body a little bit more, because if you're moving your body, it's hard to get stuck with the anxiety. I'm a big person that talks about movement because there's so many healing factors to it. It's free. If you're able-bodied and you can move your body, really trying to create a routine to move your body can be so important. Limiting screen time is important. I know this is challenging for so many parents to do, but there are so many negative effects. Being on the screen all day, all night can really mess up a child's mental health if they're constantly on there scrolling. So trying to create some kind of routine with them around not using their phone and replacing it with something else can be so important. I know trying to get to this position can be challenging, but on the other side of that challenge is a reward because you're teaching them new habits, giving them opportunities to try new things. That's important. Teaching them to give back, showing your child the benefits of sharing your time and showing kindness is important. Talking about feelings. So if you lose your temper, talk about what happened, why you were angry. That happens. You're human. I'm human. We're adults and we're human, and we need our children to know that we're human. So sometimes you may lose your temper. Sometimes you've called them 5 times and the 6th time you're screaming, and then you feel guilty for the scream. You feel bad for it. So really kind of sitting down and saying, you know what? I didn't mean to talk that way to you, right? But the reality is that I needed you to do something. So not excusing the behavior of them not listening to you, but also recognizing when you found yourself getting impulsively like emotional about something and letting them know that it happens, but just talking to them about it can be so powerful and important. And then the last one is prioritizing family time. You know, not just kids are on their phone a lot, adults, we're on our phones a lot too. And it's so important for us to create intentional time with our kids where we're not distracted. Kids know when we're distracted. They do. They know when we're not paying attention. And so really trying to be intentional about the time that you're creating with your child is important because you're showing them that you care. Not saying that you don't care because you're on your phone or you haven't spoken to them as much. But remember, as children, we believe everything is about us. We look at everything that's happening and we start to create this narrative. And so if you're always working or you're always on your phone or you're always busy and you haven't created intentional time for them, even though you may care about them, your actions are showing them that you don't. So really being mindful. And I'm not saying you have to spend a whole day or spend a half a day, but even 15, 20 minutes out your day before bed, in the morning, just kind of doing a check-in so that they know that you care is important. Now, encouraging open communication, right? That's important. And I know sometimes people struggle with like, how do I like talk to my kids or ask these open-ended questions because that's going to change the dynamic on the way the conversation is going to go. I just want to give you some examples of open-ended questions. So what's bothering you? Asking your child if there's anything that makes them feel stressed or unhappy. How are you feeling? Ask your child how their body is feeling and if they have any sleeping problems, because they may not realize that they're stressed or what they feel, but when you ask them that question, it can open up their mind to thinking about it. Like, you know what? I haven't been sleeping well. Literally the stuff that I'm talking about to do with your kids is what I talk to my adult clients about, right? Paying attention to what your body's telling you because your body is giving you signs. If you're struggling with sleep, paying attention to that because guess what? You're probably stressed or overwhelmed about something. What's your favorite way to relax? So asking your child what they can do to de-stress or feel better when they're sad or worried. Sometimes they may not even realize it, like, because some kids like gym, they like moving their body. They love puzzles. Like there are different things that kids like to do, but they don't realize, you know what, when I'm feeling stressed, I can actually tap into this or tap into that. you kind of asking them that opens up their mind to start thinking about it, right? That's important. What's the biggest problem you're facing? So ask your child what they're currently struggling with. That's important. What's the best thing that's happened to you this week? It allows them to, tap into the goodness that's happening. What do you need right now? And how can we connect regularly? So asking your child, like, what can we do to check in on a more regular basis? So those are some examples on how you can ask your child open-ended questions so you can start to work on developing a healthy communicative relationship with your kids. So modeling healthy communication. So children learn from their parents, even when they're older. Talk about your day or share something that's on your mind. I know for some generations, like I grew up, my mom did not talk about what she was feeling, where her day went like. I didn't know none of that stuff. And I realized, like, growing up, for some of us, that wasn't modeled. And so it kind of feels weird to talk about some of these things that you go through. And I understand it feels weird, but I do want you to challenge yourself and try to work on being okay with being a little bit uncomfortable about it, because it allows your child to see you as human. And it also allows them to start to be okay with realizing they're not alone and sharing some of the things that they are dealing with. Can you use this on teens? Yes, I use it with my adult clients. Like, the things that I am talking about with the kids, I do it with my kids, and I also do it with my clients. So I do want people to know you can use this on all generation of kids. Don't feel like it's too late to start. And don't be discouraged. Like, as you're starting, especially if you're starting with teens, don't be discouraged by their lack of, like, kind of enthusiasm. You're not going to get it right around this stuff. I have two children. They're completely two different kids. And my son does not show any enthusiasm, but he does it. He will check in about his feelings with me and things like that. But there's no kind of like, oh my God, this is amazing. And that's okay, because guess what? You're building resilience for them. You're allowing them to learn how to develop good habits. So when life happens, because let's face it, life happens, they're going to have the tools to deal with it. If we had social emotional learning in school growing up, imagine how many choices we would have done differently if we understood, like, oh, I'm feeling this. Because what we're feeling, unfortunately, we tend to base our behavior off of it. So some of the impulsive things that are happening is because of how you're feeling. But if you were able to, like, grab a emotion chart and grab this chart right here and be like, oh, I'm feeling bored today, right? If I said, like, I'm feeling bored, and what am I going to do about it? As opposed to, like, feeling bored and then doing something that is going to put you in a situation that you're going to be in the hole for something, right? So really being mindful of your emotion and what you're feeling, because then you can challenge that feeling. You can do something else differently than what you've already done. I have a child that just started college. Okay. Even a college kid, no matter how, if they're still breathing, take opportunity to make time to be intentional. Again, it's going to feel weird. It's new, right? When I was addicted to Whoppers and Burger Kings. And when I decided I wanted to eat healthy, I promise you that stuff tasted nasty. I had to adjust my taste buds to a different type of food choice. And eventually, like, I love vegetables and those kind of things. So it's okay that as you're starting this process, it may feel weird, but continue to be intentional about the process so that you can try to work on building healthy communication patterns with your children, and even if they're adult, with your adult children. Be an active listener. That's important. Put your phones down. If you're working, like, really create intentional time with your children as they're talking, because they can tell when you're not listening to them, and making that communication regular. Being patient and neutral. Please check your judgments at the door. There are a lot of ways that we don't understand this generation. Like, I'm gonna raise my hand. There's a lot of ways I don't understand it, but I also know I wasn't born in this generation. I wasn't born in this time. And so I have to be mindful on the things that they may be struggling with, where I'm not minimizing it. You don't want to minimize the things that they're talking about just because you don't understand or just because you didn't live in that era. And unfortunately, that's what's happening, especially thinking about like, oh, all the problems we have. And you're talking about something that happened at school against, another person. You're talking about something where, as a parent, I think parents start to think about all the things that they're dealing with. And so they tend to minimize some of the things that their child is talking about that they're struggling with. Please be mindful of not doing that. And even if you don't understand, let's say they're talking about something on social media, something that you just don't understand, you can still listen and you can be honest and be like, you know what? I never went through that. I don't understand, but I can see that it's affecting you, right? Like, what are you feeling? How does that make you feel? Go towards that, the emotion behind it, the situation that you may not understand or don't get why this is happening or why that's happening because it doesn't make sense to you. That is okay. Acknowledge it doesn't make sense, but get back to the fact that like your child is feeling something about it. And so please be mindful not to judge them as they're talking about the things with you. Know their space, get to know your child's comfortable space. My son reads anime. I don't know anything about anime. And he's so quiet. And so for me, like I said, well, how do you read it? Like what platform? And I downloaded the app that he uses to read it. And I've been reading some to just kind of connect with him more, right? I have to put in work to go into his world and look at some of the things so that I can like have conversations. He's into basketball now. I was always into football, never into basketball. Guess what I'm doing? I'm learning about basketball. Why? Because I want to show him that I care about his interest and want to learn more about what he's doing, right? So even if your kid is doing something that you don't understand or not, like again, anime, never ever had interest in it, don't understand it. I'm learning about it now, and he gets excited when I talk about it. So whatever you notice them leaning towards, if it's a video game, learn about the game. Ask if you can play, like really getting into their world, because if you start doing that, you make yourself more accessible to them and you show them that you are understanding and you care, right? So really be mindful of that. Did I go through all of them? Initiate conversation. So some children need you to start the conversation, even about sexuality. When it comes to sex and intimacy, all that stuff that you probably have your parent never talked to you about, or it feels uncomfortable, it sounds scary. Let me let you know, you can choose not to do it, but if you're choosing not to do it, you're choosing for the internet and society to do it for you. And you want the knowledge that your child is getting to come from you. I can't help what happens when they leave the house. I can't. And I recognize that. And that scares the heck out of me, that there's so much out there that they may be exposed to that I don't have control over. But what alleviates my fear is that I understand that I'm putting in the work to teach them and give them a baseline. And so I want you to like really be mindful of like, yes, this may be uncomfortable. This is new. I've never done this before. I've never had this done, but I can actually put in the work to start to allow myself to have these uncomfortable conversations, even if it's hard, because guess what? I want my child to do well in life. I want them to be okay and be comfortable. So the next thing I want to talk about is parents. So I just talked about ways to communicate with your child, thinking about their mental health, like all of that stuff matters. The most important thing that matters in this process is you. We worry a lot about our children and we want them to be okay. But at the same token, a lot of times we're not doing the things that we need to do to be okay. We're not modeling that behavior. So why is it important for you to be taking care of your mental health? So taking care of your mental health is crucial because it directly impacts their ability to provide a stable and supportive environment for your child. Research shows that a parent's mental health significantly influences a child's overall well-being. With poor mental health, potentially leading to adverse childhood experiences, developmental issues, and increased risk of mental health problems in children themselves. You have to really work on prioritizing your mental health. Like, there's no way around it. Like, if you really want to make sure that your kids are going to be okay, and if you're really concerned about their mental health, ask yourself, what are you doing to take care and prioritize your needs, right? And if you can't really if you can't honestly say, you know what, I've been doing X, Y, and Z, and if you can't name one thing that you're doing to prioritize your needs, I really want you to go back to the drawing board and think about how you can start doing that, because modeling that behavior is going to be so beneficial. Here are some key reasons why you should prioritize your mental health. One, impacts of your child's development. So children of parents with poor mental health are more likely to experience emotional difficulties, because if you're not okay, they're seeing it. Some of your behaviors and actions are happening because of your own mental health. Parenting capacity. So when parents are struggling with mental health issues, they may have difficulty managing stress, regulating their emotions, and providing consistent care for children. Consistency is key. I can't tell you how many times as I'm working with people and they talk about their anxiety a lot of, and you know, their needs were provided for them and things like that. But you know, some of the anxieties that people are dealing with are direct link from, you know, when my parent came home, I wasn't sure if they were going to be mad or sad, or they were going to be complaining about this or that. You know, sometimes we don't realize as adults, we're masking at work, we're masking for society, and bam, we come home and then we let it all out, and it's not being let out in a healthy way. And so unfortunately, who gets the brunt of that? Your partner, your children, right? And so it's so important to be honest with yourself about what you're feeling, why you're feeling it, and modeling that behavior for your child and understanding your capacity. Positive role modeling. By prioritizing your mental health, you demonstrate healthy coping mechanisms and practicing self-care. So many times adults don't know how to say they need help. So many times adults don't know how to slow down, because guess what? They never watched their parents slow down. Especially certain cultures, especially when it comes to women, I know they don't really know how to like take care of themselves as far as the self-care piece. The only thing they've watched modeled is other people being taken care of. The only thing they've watched model is their caregiver always saying yes and doing all of these things for other people. And you wonder why now you're struggling with slowing down and taking care of yourself, because that's what was modeled for you. So if you work on prioritizing your needs and creating self-care, you're teaching your child why that's important and how they can make it happen. It reduces abuse and neglect. So if you are working on your mental health, your risk of neglecting your kids' emotional needs is higher. It's lower, right? It'll be harder for you to neglect their emotional needs if you're taking care of yourself emotionally. But if you're not taking care of yourself, then it's that risk of you affecting their mental health, the risk of abuse or neglect, right? There's a difference between emotional abuse and emotional neglect. Abuse, I'm talking about you talking down to your child, you calling them out their names, like all of these things. That's abuse. Neglect, which a lot of people have experienced emotional abuse, but a lot of us have experienced a lot of emotional neglect. And it's not because our parent was like, oh, I'm not going to take care of your emotional needs. Partly they didn't know. They've come from survival. They don't understand how to do that with themselves, right? And so your emotional needs wasn't taken care of. And it's not that your parent was bad, but they didn't have the tools to take care of their emotional needs. So it would be hard for them to take care of yours. And so if you're a parent, if you working on your emotional needs, you'll be able to take care of your child's emotional needs better as well. Improve family dynamics. So if you're working on your mental health, the way the dynamic of you and the relationship with your child is going to look a lot better. I want to show you this quick clip on supporting your child, and then I'm just going to talk about support systems, because that's important. I know a lot of people aren't used to developing support systems, but I promise you, it takes a lot to help to raise like healthy kids. And if you have that support, all the better. So let's just watch this clip really quick. It's 1 minute.
I've noticed from my son, even at a very early age, is he notices when I'm on my phone. He notices when I'm not fully present. And I think that has a huge impact on kids' mental health. Be as present as you possibly can. And if you don't have the bandwidth for it in that moment, like there's sometimes where I truly just have to jump on something, then I am like expressing that to my son and saying, hey, you know, do you want to watch the show real quick? Mommy has to take a call, but I'm being really clear that like mommy's focusing on this. So I think that's, you know, and no parent's perfect. It still happens all the time to me, but I think that's one of the best things you can do for kids' mental health for sure, is just try to give them the undivided attention when you have it, or be really transparent that you both need to focus on other things for a second and then come back together.
So it's not about always, you know, my kid needs me right now, let me run to them. Sometimes you're not going to have the ability to do that. That's okay. Just let them know, like, I can't do it right now. But imagine if you were to create intentional time. And the reason why I like the bedtime idea, because it's something that happens every night. It's something that you can be more consistent with. But again, if there's other times that you can connect and make intentional time with your child, try to do that. That's important. The last thing I want to say about this subject is building support systems. Don't be afraid to ask for help. I am the second oldest child. My brother's always been in and out of jail, so I've been the oldest. I've been the oldest one, and I'm very independent. I'm always I'm just a really self-sufficient self-starter, and me asking for help was something that was hard to do. Like now it's easier for me to do, but I do understand that it's not something that I see modeled and kind of put in a role to help with my younger siblings and do a lot of things. So being mindful of like your ability to ask for help and why it may be hard, but sometimes you just have to do it, even if it's uncomfortable, because it's what you need. So therapy is one, right? I do believe in therapy. Family, there, you know, I know everybody doesn't have a family system that is functional or works well, but then there may be some family members that you find that you can that can be supportive. When I'm working with people and they've talked about like different people in their lives, so I get to know their world, and I'll be like, well, what about this person? They'll be like, you know what? I haven't really thought about that, right? I want you to think about, like, as I'm reading these different support systems, I want you to think about building a toolbox so that you can have different options for support, right? So as you know, when I think about, if you're watching this, this is you in the circle, and then there's one line, right? It can't just be one thing that you're looking at for support. Like I want you to be able to have so many different options to lean in, different things, right? Okay, I could do this, I can do that, right? So really building your toolbox so you have, because that family member may not always be available. Therapy's once a week, right? So what else can I do in the meantime? Coaches are great. And then there's these different organizations. I just put two here that I'm familiar with. NAMI is one, and NAMI is national. PPAL is based in Massachusetts. I know people listen to me from different places, but they have a lot of online programming. I spoke at one of the things that they had online, and so that's why I'm sharing. And NAMI, again, national. There are certain NAMI organizations, they do a lot of online programming. Church, for some people, their churches do have different programs and things that can help. Podcasts are helpful, support group, wellness centers. I also said use Google if you have to, and check out your state site. As I'm sharing these different things, right? I want to point out that if you're not used to asking for help, it may feel weird. I also want to point out that if you don't feel like doing it, understand, like, that's normal, because it's not like if you're used to being a part of support system, your system's gonna be like, yeah, let's go do this, right? Not feeling like doing it, I understand, but don't do it based off of the fact that you don't feel like doing it. Like, don't do that to yourself, because you go to work when you don't feel like doing it because you know you want to get the check. And so I need you, as you're trying to like work on building resources and building support for yourself, I want you to think about the fact that like, this feels scary, this feels hard, but my goal is because I want to be okay. I want my children to be okay. So I'm going to do this anyway. So think about, and again, that gratification, like the check you get a weekly or biweekly, is the easier gratification to lean on. But obviously this gratification that I'm talking about when it comes to like being well, it's going to take some time. But I promise you, the more you deposit into your life, the more you're depositing into your children's life, the outcomes are going to look different, right? So if you are struggling individually with your own spiritual wellness and mental health, you got to really be honest with yourself and ask yourself, like, well, what am I depositing into my life to be okay? Right? If it's the middle of the day, I try not to eat. I love, like, one of my favorite meals is cheeseburgers and fries. But I know if I have it for lunch, I'm going to feel like very low energy. I'm gonna feel low energy for the rest of the day because it weighs me down. Like, the food you eat really has an effect on you. And it's something we're not taught, especially in the Black community. Food's a big part of what we do. It's a part of a lot of things, but the types of foods that we're eating on a regular basis are weighing us down and affecting like our mental health. So really being mindful on what you're choosing. And as you're trying to navigate this new way of communicating with your child, as you're trying to navigate this new way of taking care of your mental health, really be mindful that there's going to be days you don't feel like doing it. And that's okay. But if you start to look at your goal, like, what do you want to accomplish? Let that help lead you into creating some kind of discipline and consistency so that you can get to where you need to be. So I hope that was helpful. I hope that makes sense. You know, if anything I ever say resonates for you, understand that you have the power to create change. A lot of times we think it's this person or that person, or it's our trauma or our history, and it's stopping us from being great, or it's stopping us from getting to where we need to be. And if you think about your trauma or your history, it's in the past, you can't change it. But because you're not dealing with the things, unfortunately, it's the lens on your present, and it doesn't have to be that way. A lot of times you're stopping your progress and change because the thing that you need to do, it feels hard. And if it was easy, everybody would be doing it. So there's no way around the hard part. And I think if you start to remind yourself of that, it can help you check yourself. It can help you change your language around what you're choosing to do, and do it despite how you feel. Feelings are there. They're trying to tell us a story, but they're not facts. And we shouldn't be basing our decision-making off of our feelings. So thank you so much for tuning in. And if you are not following me on social media, you can follow me at Celeste the Therapist everywhere. And then if you want to learn more about my wellness center, you can go to stwyt.com. And that's the acronym for shifting the way you think. You're so welcome. I'm glad you enjoyed it. That's the acronym for shifting the way you think. And this video platform, whatever you're watching me on, because I'm on YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook, it stays on the video platform. And then the audio is going to be released next week. So thank you so much. I'll talk to you later.
Talk about your pain, can't appreciate the sun without acknowledging it rains, right? That's right. So this a moment of clarity. And make sure you always protect your energy. You stay focused and your life gon' be lit. And you are now rocking with Celeste the Therapist. Let's go.